bom dia, senhoras e senhores.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Bom dia, em nome do
Good
Fundo de
morning,
Defesa
ladies
da
and gentlemen. On
Citricultura,
behalf of
Fundecitrus,
Fundecitrus
mais uma vez
Science
a todos
and
vocês
Sustainability
presentes,
towards
e
Citriculture,
também
I'd like to
para aqueles
welcome
que
you
nos
all,
acompanham
and
pela
also
transmissão ao
those
vivo
watching
no
us
site.
live
Já
through our
estamos, gente, nada
website.
menos do que ao vivo para
We
15
have
países nesse
15
momento.
countries
Então,
following
dá para
our
notar a
presentation today, so you
importância
see
da
how important
citricultura,
citriculture
da
is,
pujança
and
onde a citricultura está presente no nosso setor.
how important we are in our sector.
Quem está nos acompanhando, inclusive, pela transmissão ao vivo,
Watching us
pode enviar
live,
a sua pergunta
those watching
pelo
us live
WhatsApp.
may also
Então,
send
vamos lá,
us
código
your
55
questions. So
Brasil,
55 Brazil, 16 area code 996292471. That's the number you can use to forward questions you may have. Now we'll start this event for the orange crop forecast announcement for the 2019-2020 crop, and also the tree inventory for the citrus belt in São Paulo and southwest Minas Gerais, carried out by PES. That is the crop forecast survey. Fundecitrus carries out work towards those two documents together with Marquestrate, Unesp Jabuticabal, and USP-FEA Ribeirão Preto. For sure, this work democratizes access to information and serves as a basis for decisions to be made by citrus growers. PES data disclose the actual size of citriculture and for sure contribute to planning the future of the sector so that this crop goes on being one of the most socially and economically important for significantly creating jobs and generating income. Just so you all know, we inform that this event will go as follows. First, you're going to have the crop announcement, and then next, the institutional video on the methodology used, and then presentation of the main data of the tree inventory and the crop forecast. And towards the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. Both those here, from here, the auditorium, and also questions from those watching us live in Brazil and overseas by means of our WhatsApp number. Now, I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the presence of the following authorities. Fabio Padua, here representing the State Representative Arnaldo Jardim, and Fabio is a Congress advisor in Brasilia. So the tree inventory data was restricted solely to the professionals linked to Fundecitrus, namely the Vice President of the Board, the General Manager of Fundecitrus, PES supervisors, and partners from institutions that contribute to the survey, Marquestrate, Unesp, Jabuticabal, and USP-FEA Ribeirão Preto. All of them were subject to confidentiality obligations with regard to information before its announcement is made public, according to agreements signed between each of them and us at Fundecitrus. Crop forecast figures were consolidated in a meeting just this morning from 7:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. So for us to continue with our event, the 2019-2020 Orange Crop Forecast announcement, would like to acknowledge the absence of the President of Fundecitrus Board of Governors, Lorival Carmo Monaco, our President, due to commitments abroad. So we kindly invite the Vice President of Fundecitrus, Roberto Hugo Young Jr., to fill in for him. Also, to come to the stage, we invite Juliano Aires, that is the Fundecitrus General Manager, the Political, Institutional, and Methodological Coordinator of PES, Marcos Fava Neves, part-time full professor at FEA USP Ribeirão Preto, and board member of Marquestrate and other organizations. Executive coordinators Vinicius Gustavo Trombin with Marquestrate. And professor at Unesp and coordinator of statistics, Professor José Carlos Barbosa.
nós também convidamos
And
para a
also would
solenidade
like
os
to this
supervisores da PES,
event
Fernando
the past
Delgado,
supervisors
e também
Fernando
a senhora
Delgado
Roseli Reina,
and
para ocuparem os locais reservados aqui na primeira fileira.
also Roseli Reina to take a seat that is reserved here for them in the first row of this
Neste
auditorium.
momento, então, convidamos
Right
o
now, I would like to
vice-presidente
invite the
do
Vice President of
Fundecitrus,
Fundecitrus, Roberto Hugo Young Jr., to announce the 2019-2020 Orange Crop Forecast. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fundecitrus.
Aqui, confirmando a nossa expectativa.
Just confirming our expectations here of a biannuality of
A safra de
effects.
2020 é o quinto anúncio de safra.
This is the fifth announcement by Fundecitrus. It's going to be 890,000 boxes. 388,890 boxes.
São Paulo and West-Southwest Minas Gerais citrus belt is the largest in the world in growing oranges to produce juice. Morning nutrition that provides energy for the whole day. Preparing for the future every day. Brazilian citriculture is ready to meet the global demand for many years to come. In the southeast of the country, citriculture in São Paulo and Minas Gerais found favorable soil and climate and proper infrastructure. Developed and perfected a world of integrated technical operations, which is always evolving. With its own science and sustainability center, partnerships with universities and research institutions in several parts of the world. Technology transfer. Healthy nursery plants of genetic quality from modern nurseries. Cultural tracks. Plant health protection. Industrial park with processes aimed at product excellence. And the manufacturing of safe foods. Sophisticated logistics system. Internationally respected representative agencies. And environmental care. As it conquers the world, citriculture in São Paulo and Minas Gerais fosters the economic and social development of cities where that activity is present and encouraged, creating jobs and income, and collecting taxes that will fund public education and health systems. By estimating the orange crop and offering to the sector a world of precise information of the citrus planted area, simultaneously to all citrus growers, the Crop Forecast Survey and the Tree Inventory, carried out by Fundecitrus, become an essential tool for creating a safe and transparent environment where economic agents interact, make decisions based on updated data, interpret reality, plan with strategy and tactic, and make the most opportunities. Since crops are different from one another, the methodology for the forecast and the inventory is continually being improved to gather and convey the particularities of each crop season. Audits in all processes. Random choice of plots. Growers' identity kept confidential. And respect to legislation and good competitive practices. Favoring the democratization of information access and valuing the balance among parties competing in the market. Guarantee work impartiality and reliability. By moving worlds, the industry, citrus growers, and Fundecitrus contribute to preserve the distribution of wealth, the pride of thousands of families that make a living from managing the land, and our Brazilian citriculture ranking first in the world.
We invite now to the floor from the Citrus General Manager Juliano Aires to present the data on the tree inventory for the citrus planted area and the crop estimate. Please, a round of applause.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning,
É
everyone.
com muita satisfação que a gente
It's a pleasure
recebe vocês aqui na casa de
for
vocês,
me
na
to
nossa
welcome
casa.
you all here at home,
Vamos
in
mostrar
our
todos
home,
os dados
and I'd like to show you the data for this crop forecast survey and the tree inventory so that we can provide credibility to the figure announced by our Vice President.
8 milhões de carros.
Of the 388,089 million, rather, 388 million, 0.89 million boxes.
Em seguida, 288,89 milhões de caixas,
So
40,8
388.89 million boxes of 40.8 kilos. This slide has been shown before. Here we can see that there is a alternance of production in the citrus, in orange, and that's very much connected to climate conditions from the previous year, and also to the development of the fruit resulting from that. This is one of the crops with the largest production. Last year was an average crop, the historical average of 321 million. So you see that this alternance is natural to orange trees. How do we determine this final number? Well, there's an equation that was well studied. It has a confidence level that is very significant, and we are going to be talking about each of the specific topics here. Number of bearing trees, fruit per tree, fruit per box or fruit size, the destination of the fruit, and also the correction factor. I'd like to remind you that basically we have two basic assumptions. First is the mapping of a citrus growth that is carried out in a precise way every 3 years with aerial photography and satellite images, and also work in the field. And then we have the sampling of 5% of the area in the next 2 years to see if the area has expanded or retracted. After we count the number of trees in the inventory, from January, February, March, this is when we have this sampling to see if there's been any change. Then we have the stripping of trees from March to April. And then from May on, May 10th on, we have this work carried out of following up the size of a fruit drop. We have basic assumptions that we use for that, and then that is done in the field to analyze changes that take place due to weather or presence of pests and disease. So just to like to remind you here that every 3 years we have this more detailed work, plant to plant, plot by plot, and farm by farm, and then in the next 2 years following that we have a sampling of 5% of the area. So we visit all farms. This year we are sampling, this year is the sampling year, both for new growths and adult ones, mature ones. This is a very precise mapping of the citrus planted area with different spacing, varieties, irrigation or not. All the strategic factors are included in this work. We have this check-in on site in the field, considering not only the number of trees, but also age, tree age, 4 categories, dead trees or missing trees. And then with that, we have precise information on our
trabalho é
plots.
feito
This work is
por uma
carried
equipe
out
aí
by
durante
a
4 meses,
team
quase 120 pessoas envolvidas.
of 120 people
trabalho
for 4
muito
months, and it's a
minucioso,
very
pessoal
detailed
altamente
work
comprometido
with
e
very
qualificado.
high commitment
gostaria
people
de
and very skilled
realçar
people as well. I'd like to
papel
highlight
extraordinário
the
do
extraordinary
nosso
role
coordenador
of our
Vinícius,
coordinator
que tem
Vinicius
muito rigor em todo esse
that
trabalho
is
com
very
toda a equipe.
rigorous in our work.
A questão
carried out by this team.
das idades, aqui
As
exemplifica
for
bem, né,
tree
as categorias,
ages,
nós temos uma idade
we have
zero, que é pomar
categories
não é
that is
produtivo,
0, that
depois
is non-bearing
de 3 a
growth,
5
and then
anos,
3 to 4
6 a
years
10,
of age,
acima de
6 to
10
10,
anos.
and
Então,
above
são
10.
4
So we have
categorias. E aí
4
se
categories
nota
of
bem
age, and here
essa
we can
diferença
see
no
this
mesmo
difference
talhão
in the same
das
plot
diferentes
of
categorias.
different
Isso muito em
categories
função
being present.
de
That is
doenças,
very much
principalmente
due
do
to
greening.
diseases,
Você tem
especially
uma alta
greening,
taxa de
with a
replantio
high
nos dias atuais.
renewal or
Outro exemplo,
replanting
né, da
of
idade
growth.
3, pomar
So, for
adulto,
example, here age
já
3,
planta aí com 1 ano de
mature
idade,
growth, and
idade
here 1-year-old
zero.
tree with the category
Esse
0.
trabalho todo
First category.
é feito no campo,
0
coordenado pelo
years
professor
of
Barbosa, é
age.
feito
Here,
trabalho de
Professor Barbosa
amostral
coordinates
de
this work in the
2.200
field.
árvores
We
adultas
have 2,200
e
trees
360
that are
replantas,
mature and sampled,
e elas são
and 360
representativas
resets that are
das
representative
diferentes
of
regiões,
different
variedades,
regions, varieties,
tamanho de propriedade, então ela confere
size of farms.
número
So that is
muito
all
seguro em termos amostral.
that all provides us with a very
Em relação à escolha da planta
precise
também é
number in
feita de
terms
forma
of sampling
amostral.
that we can have
Existe
confidence in.
uma planta
Here
aí
we have a
previamente
predetermined
sorteada.
location, and the
Vocês podem
plot
observar
of the
a 22ª
tree to be
planta,
stripped is the
que tem uma forma de
22nd
caminhamento,
tree.
que
When you
também dá
walk down
segurança.
the
Essa
row,
planta é uma
and
planta
that
que
is a
representa
plant that will
a média
represent the average
do que seria no talhar.
for
Por isso ela é
what we have
foi
in the
determinada
plot.
dessa forma.
That's why we determined to sample that
A
tree.
partir do momento que
As of the
é feita
time
isso,
we
esse
have the
material
stripping
vem,
of trees,
essas
then
frutas vêm de
fruit
Laranja
come
do
to
Araraquara, num
a
barracão, onde é feito
lab
todo
in
o trabalho
Araraquara where
de
we have all the
contagem
work of
e
counting
também
and
da
also
determinação do peso.
determination
Por
of their
variedade,
weight. Per variety,
especifica
in this
cada
specific
talhão,
case,
cada
each
região
plot and
dessas
each region of those 2,560
ela é
plots,
contada,
then
forma
we'll have this fruit
auditada, um número
harvested
bastante
and
seguro.
counted,
E além
and there is
disso,
audit
também
to
se
that, and now it's a very safe, or a number that we can have confidence in. And also we determine the weight of each fruit coming to this lab, so we can be very confident of the number that we present to you today.
Esse trabalho depois ele é feito
After
após o
that,
anúncio
we
da
have
estimativa do dia 10,
this work that is done
monitoramento
after
no
the
campo,
crop announcement, that is the
determina
monitoring in the
em função
field,
das condições
to determine,
climáticas,
according to the weather
como está o
conditions,
desenvolvimento,
how
se ele está dentro
the
do que
development of
foi
fruit
previamente estimado, né?
is going,
Então,
if it's within the
o tamanho
previously
do fruto, o peso, ele é
forecast.
feito aí
So
mensalmente
we
esse
have the
acompanhamento.
size and weight
Variedade
of
é
fruit
variedade, né?
determined
Também
for
outro
each
fator que
variety.
é
And also another
determinante é a
determining
queda.
factor is the
Nós sabemos que
droppage or
após o
fruit
anúncio,
drop.
dois fatores
After
que
this
podem
announcement, we have two factors that may affect
afetar a estimativa que
the
foi
estimate that
pré-determinada,
was
que é o
predetermined,
peso
that
e
is the
a
weight
queda, né?
and the
Então, isso
drop.
também é feito em 1.200
Fruit
talhões,
weight and fruit
de forma
drop. So that is
aleatória,
also
e
carried out
representa o
for
setor. Esse
1,200
processo tem sido
plots representing the
aperfeiçoado, nós
sector. We have
incorporamos
perfected
agora
this process
um
now
sistema
with
convencional, uma rede, e ela,
adding a
de
net
certa forma,
that somehow will
concentra a fruta nessas redes, não tendo o risco de
gather all the
perder
fruit
fruta nenhuma
that falls
nessas
down, that
plantas
drops, so we
marcadas.
don't lose any fruit
exemplo, e
in those
mensalmente,
planted, in
essas
those
frutas
plants that are
são
previously marked. And then
contadas e se determina
fruit
a causa
collected
da
in the
queda.
net
Se é
are
um
counted,
efeito
and then we
mecânico,
determine the
que praga ou
reason
doença
for the
que
drop,
foi
if it's
um
mechanic,
fator determinante da
effect,
queda
pest
da
or disease, or whatever is the
Isso é
reason that
contabilizado
caused the
mensalmente.
fruit drop. That is
Outro fator que pode interferir
taken into account on a monthly
na
basis.
questão
Another
da-
factor that may
do
interfere
acompanhamento do peso é a
in
escolha
weight
da
of fruit
fruta.
is the choosing of the fruit. So we have developed together with the committee, the technical committee here, a system that removes the subjectivity. So you don't choose the fruit, using your own criteria, but rather you use this type of device where you end up having the average fruit weight in the middle of the plant height with the use of this device.
Então, para falar especificamente agora do
So,
nosso
to talk specifically
trabalho
about
de
our
campo,
work
do
in the
inventário, da
field,
estimativa,
in the inventory and the estimate, we have to remember that we have 5 sectors in the state of São Paulo, regions more to the north and northwest, and then the central region, south and southwest, 5 sectors.
regiões
and
com
12
condições
regions with the climatic conditions. They're distinct
em termos de localização.
in terms of where they are
Como está
located.
distribuídas as variedades laranja, existem
So
as
here we have the
laranjas
orange
que
varieties.
destinam para a indústria.
We have those that are aimed at processing. Early seasons are Hamlin, Weston, and Ruby, Valencia, Americana, Selecta, and Pineapple. And then mid-season, the most important one is Pera Hill. And then late season, Valencia, Valencia, Folha Murcha, and Natal. The other ones are aimed at fresh fruit
As
market.
4 categorias.
Four
lembrando,
categories
né,
of
idade,
plot age.
Zero, são
Zero,
formatos improdutivos.
that is a non-bearing
3 a 5,
growths.
que é a
3 to
categoria
5, that is the
6 a 10,
category 1,
2
6
a
to 10,
3,
2,
os
and then
pomares acima de
above
10 anos.
10 years of age,
A nossa
category
lembrar
3.
que nesses,
We have to remind you
talhões
that
que
in
eles
those
têm,
plots,
muitas vezes,
we have
é
many
normal
times
replantas de diferentes
resets of
categorias,
different
ou seja, tem que
categories,
ser contabilizado
and that
depois.
has to be taken into account
forma
as well, independently.
Voltando na
So
equação,
back to the
Então, a
equation.
primeira questão
So the
é o
first
número de árvores
Item
produtivas.
is bearing trees that we talked
Aconteceu de
about.
2018
So what
para
happened from 2018 to 2019 in terms of bearing trees?
Nós tivemos,
We have had,
aqui vocês observam,
and here you can see it,
aqui está em árvores
here bearing trees
milhões, né?
in millions,
194
194
milhões,
million
nós estamos com
trees,
195, cerca de 800
and
mil
here
árvores a
195.
mais.
That is
Quando se analisa a árvore produtiva acima de 3 anos,
variation.
o número reduziu
So you have,
cerca de 1.200.000.
for bearing trees, we have a reduction here from 175 to 173.
né? Então existe
So
uma
there is
tendência
a
de crescimento de árvores
growing trend for trees that are non-bearing and reduction of bearing trees in the short term.
Quando se observa em
When
termos
we
de área,
see
o efeito
that in terms of
mais
area,
marcante no
this
sentido
effect is
que a
even
área
more
reduziu quase
remarkable
6.000 hectares.
because we have almost
400.000 hectares de
6,000
laranjas.
hectares
Então,
reduction
agora nós
here.
estamos 395.
So we have
E aí
now
tem a contabilidade,
395,000
hectares que foram arrancados e não renovados.
instead of 401 before,
1.521
the year before. So we have
são áreas que,
1,521 of area that was abandoned. And then we have the expansion area of 8,474. And then 468 is the acreage that was abandoned, but it was recovered in 2018.
De laranja no estado de São Paulo.
So this is million hectares, the unit
Quando
for
se
the state of
faz
Sao
uma
Paulo.
análise
When we have an
nos 5
analysis
setores,
in 5 sectors,
forma macro,
in a macro
observa
view, then we can
que
see
as duas regiões
that the
mais
two regions that are
tradicionais
more
da citricultura,
traditional for
a região
citriculture,
centro,
that is the central region, Araraquara, Matão, Itápolis,
sul,
and the south
Praia de
region,
Limeira, Porto Ferreira,
that is
Mogi,
Limeira, Porto Ferreira, and
são as
Mogi,
regiões mais tradicionais do
more
estado.
traditional
Houve uma
regions than in the
redução
States,
drástica
they have a drastic
no número de
reduction
hectares.
in the
E a
number of
principal
hectares.
explicação
And the
para
main
isso
explanation for
é o
that
greening.
is greening.
Aí estão as áreas de
Here we
maior
have the
incidência
areas
da
of a
doença,
largest
e por onde
incidence
a
of the
doença
disease,
se
where the
instalou
disease
inicialmente,
installed
e houve um
initially,
gradiente de
so there was
expansão.
an expansion
Então, é
gradient.
onde
This
afetou
is
mais
where we
fortemente a
have greening
produtividade
affected
dos pomares, e se houve uma
the yield of
erradicação
growth
maior.
more
A
intensely
região
with more
norte,
eradication.
quase
In the
um
north
leve
region,
crescimento, e as outras
a little
mais
bit
ou
of
menos
growth, and then
estáveis.
as an exception, and the other ones are stable,
Diferença pequena de um ano para
with a
outro.
little difference from one year to the other.
Quando se faz análise
When
em
we
termos
have
de,
the analysis
aí,
in terms
áreas de pomares
of
novos,
new plantings,
hectare,
new planted
estamos em
growth,
de hectares,
this
né?
is hectares,
Vocês
the
observam
unit.
que existe
We can
uma
see
leve
that there is a
tendência de crescimento.
little upward
Com as
trend
condições mais favoráveis,
with more
aí,
favorable
o
conditions,
efeito Flórida,
with
que
the Florida
a produção caiu
effect,
drasticamente, e as condições
with the
melhoraram aqui para os
decreased
agricultores.
production, so our conditions
Existe uma
here
retomada
improved.
de
So there is a
plantio
pickup of
mais
planting,
gradativa.
but it's very gradual.
Em termos de perfil
In terms
de
of a profile
varietal, o que está acontecendo?
of varieties,
Nós
what's
estamos
going on?
colocando
Well,
a
here we
fotografia
have
de
a
2018,
snapshot
está
for
presente no viveiro.
2018
Mas
of
se
what
a
we
gente
have in our
comparar
nursery
o
plants.
parque
So if we
instalado
compare
hoje,
that with the
poderia dizer
installed
para vocês que a Hamlin
planted
tem
area,
uma média
we
de
can see the
12%,
Hamlin
ela caiu
is,
para 8%.
was
Então,
before
está tendo uma
12%,
redução
now it's
de
down to
Hamlin.
8%. So there's been a
Americana
reduction of
estava com
Hamlin.
4%,
Americana had used to
subiu para
have
8%.
4% and now
A
it's
Ruby também
8%.
vem crescendo,
Ruby
de
has
2 para
also
4.
been growing
Pineapple também
2
um leve
to 4.
crescimento.
Pineapple
A
a
pera
slight growth.
vem
Pera
ganhando mais importância,
has
de 34
becoming more
ela foi para
important. From
38,
34, it
E a
went up to
Valência
38%, and
reduziu,
Valencia
estava acima de
reduced. It was
30%,
above
tá com
30%, and now it's
a Natal está
23%.
estável.
Natal is
Então, de
stable.
forma geral,
So, in
Hamelin e
general,
Valência
Hamelin and Valencia
diminuindo a
decreased
importância
in
relativa e a
relative
Pera e as
importance, and
precoces
Pera
de
and the
qualidade aumentando a
earlies
importância
have
relativa.
increased their relative
E
importance.
densidade de plantio.
Now,
Se vocês observarem
density of
após
growth
2004,
after
2005, que é o
20,
momento da detecção do greening,
2004
houve
and
uma
5, when we
tendência de
detected
maior
greening, there
densamento
was a
para
trend
ter
of
maior
more
precocidade e maior
dense
produtividade por área.
planting.
Mas parece que
But
nós
it
já chegamos
seems that
próximo
we have
do
come
ponto ideal.
close
O
to the
densamento,
ideal
tem
point,
limite.
because
Acima de algum
planting density has a limit.
plantas, o
After a
efeito
certain
é
number of
negativo.
plants per area, the effect
o ano
becomes
2018
negative.
já mostra
So 2018
uma queda
shows
do número
a
de
decrease in the
plantas
number of
por
plants
hectare
per
em relação
hectare
aos
as
2 anos
compared to the
anteriores.
2 previous years.
A média do estado
Average for the state is 493,
e Pomares em informação está em
and
657.
young growth
Pomares adultos,
657.
482.
Mature growth for 182. That explains, in part, even with the area being reduced, you can see that the yield has increased,
Comentar.
as we are going to talk about
Pomares
later.
abandonado, com as
Abandoned
condições mais
groves,
favoráveis, houve uma redução de
There was a
quase
reduction
2.000
of
hectares
almost
de pomares
2,000
abandonados,
hectares
próximo
of
de
abandoned
5.000
groves. It
hectares,
used to be
5.115, e hoje esse número aí se reduziu em quase 2.000 hectares.
5,115, and now it's 348 because of new plantings or because of changing into use of new crops. So this is less than 1% of the area today in the States with abandoned groves. That is a concern that we have in terms of greening especially.
Frutos por árvore.
Now,
Vamos
fruit per
analisar um pouco
tree.
mais
Let's
de perto
analyze that in
esses
more
dados.
depth.
Vocês observam que,
You can see
como nos anos
that
anteriores,
just like the
aí nós
years
temos
before,
fotografia
and
dos
here we
últimos
have a
5 anos,
snapshot of the last 5
uma
years,
característica
there is
genética
a
de cada
genetic
variedade,
characteristic for each variety,
o grupo das
which
sempre são os mais
Hamelin group
produtivos.
is always the
Valência
most
americana com
productive.
pineapple tem uma
Valencia,
importância
Americana, and
também
pineapple
grande
also
em termos de
have
produtividade. E a
great
Natal
importance
e
in terms of
Valência
yield.
vem depois.
Natal and Valencia
Vocês,
coming after
analisam
that.
que
But you
nesse
can
ano
see
de
that this year,
2019,
2019,
praticamente todas as
practically all
variedades estão com
varieties
produtividade
have yield
alta em termos
that
de
is
potencial
high in
produtivo.
terms of
Pelo
productive
número de
potential
frutos
due to the number of
por
fruit
árvore
per
que
tree
foi obtido. Aqui
that
nós
was
temos
obtained.
frutos por árvore,
Here we
né?
have fruit
Então,
per
vocês
tree.
observam lá, Hamelin
So
1114,
Hamelin
a Pera que tem menos produtos por árvore,
1,114,
665,
Pera
e aí você tem a média histórica de
665, and then the
5 anos, né?
historical average
Então,
for
é
5
ano
years.
de
So this is a
elevado
year of
de
a high
frutos por
number of
árvore.
fruit per tree.
As condições de clima foram extremamente
Climate conditions were
favoráveis,
extremely
nós tivemos
favorable. We
bem
have
bom
had
regamento,
good fruit
e
setting,
depois
and
desse desenvolvimento
after
todo.
this,
Então,
after
essa
that,
é
all
a-
this favorable
a situação.
development. So
E o
that's the
número
current
global que nós
outlook,
estamos
and the global
utilizando
figure
aí
that we
para estimativa
used for
é
this estimate
783
is of 783 fruit
por árvore,
per tree,
acima
above
dos anos anteriores.
the number of previous years.
Quando se faz a fotografia
When we have the
para
snapshot
cinco
for
regiões do estado,
5 regions of the
vocês
state,
observam
then we can see
que a região
that
sudoeste,
the southwest region, as expected, is the
o
region
maior número de frutos
with the highest number of fruit
por árvore,
per
né, em
tree
termos médios,
in
né,
average
850.
figures,
A região
850, and then
sul
south
também tem um número,
has also a considerable
é a quarta,
number,
né? A
ranking
região
fourth.
Central também
Central
é um número
region,
bastante expressivo,
very
né?
significant figure as well, 778. And we can see that in the north region, we also have a large number of fruit
Tinha tido
that
número pequeno,
had
norte e noroeste no ano
before
anterior, e esse ano ele
being
está com uma
small,
safra
but now
bastante expressiva.
this is a
A
very
média, então, dos
significant number
783,
back
aí você
again.
tem,
So the average
nesse ano de
783
2019,
for
561, que é a média dos 5 anos.
this year,
Quando se
561
olha
is
com mais
average
detalhes,
for the 5 years.
as
When you
12
look into more
regiões,
details for all
a
the
gente chamaria a
regions,
atenção que a região de
then
Avaré esse ano e
Avaré
Duartina
and
são as
Duartina
duas
regions
regiões
are the two
com
ones
o maior número de
with the highest
frutos por
number of
árvore.
fruit per
O
tree.
clima é mais ameno, a
With a
florada
more
ocorreu
mild
lá no momento
weather,
ideal
with
e o
blooming
pegamento foi
taking
muito alto.
place at the right
Tapetininga
time,
caiu
and fruit
pouco,
setting was very high.
teve pouco
Tapetininga
efeito
had
da
a little
proteção
bit
floral naquela
lower
região.
because we had the
E as
post-bloom
outras
fruit
regiões
drop.
também,
And also we have the other
Bebedouro e
regions like
Altinópolis,
Bebedouro and
com mais de
Altinópolis
800
with more
frutos
than 800
por
fruit
árvore.
per tree.
Então, um ano de que não
So
tem
it's
tanta
a year
variação
where we have not a
entre
lot
as
of
regiões, porque
variations
foi uma
among
condição
regions
de clima
because of
excepcional em
the
todas as
exceptionally
duas regiões do
good
estado.
climate for all
Em
regions
parte,
in the state.
explica
And
esse número
that
elevado
explains
de
this
fruta,
high
porque
number
todas as
of
regiões
fruit
teve uma
per
condição boa.
tree because of
Quando a
this
gente
general
estratifica
good conditions
isso
for the whole
nas
area.
três
When we
categorias, de 3 a
stratify
5,
that
6 a
in
10,
the
acima de 10,
categories,
vocês
3 to
observam
5
que
years
existe
old, 6 to 10
uma
and
variação
above 10
grande
years
das
old, we see
replantas
that
em
there is a
relação
variation in terms of
à planta
resets
adulta da
as
idade
compared
inicial.
to
Isso é normal.
mature plants of
Quanto
initial
mais
age. That is
velho o pomar,
expected. The older the
menos
growth,
é o número de frutos
the lower
nas
the
replantas.
number of fruits in the
Então, aí nós temos
resets.
uma média
So
aí
here we
dos
have the
pomares
average
acima de 10
for
anos, de
groves that are
963
over 10 years old,
por planta, de 6 a 10,
and 6 to 10, 652, and
652,
younger groves,
No momento de fazer a
291.
estimativa, se leva em consideração esses 6
So
estratos
here
aí
we,
de categoria
for the
de idade.
estimate, we take into consideration the 6
Então, isso é uma fotografia
strata
que
for
representa
different
bem a
age
situação
categories.
desse ano,
So this is a picture that
onde
illustrates the situation
existe
this
predomínio
year,
da primeira
where we
e
have a
segunda
prevalence
florar.
of first and second blooms.
Foi muito forte.
That was
isso aí,
very
intense,
intense, a little bit different from previous years. There's going to be
uma colheita mais uniforme.
a more uniform harvest as a result. How is that distributed? Well, the first bloom represents 84%, second bloom 10%, and then the other blooms,
A terceira e a quarta,
third and fourth,
5,7%.
5.7% altogether.
O que aconteceu se a gente fizer
So
uma
what
fotografia
happened
nas
if
12
we have
regiões?
these
observam que não houve muita
snapshot
variação.
for the 12 regions?
Evidente que
Well, you see that there's not a lot of
existe, por exemplo,
variations.
Triângulo
Of
Mineiro,
course, we have
a maior
specific
parte
regions
dos
like
pomares
us,
do bebedouro
the
são
West
irrigados.
Minas Gerais, we
Então,
have
existe uma
irrigated
predominância
growth, so
da
there is a
propriedade,
prevalence in this
principalmente
area
da primeira
of
florada,
the
90%.
first bloom, 90%.
Existem
And
situações,
also
por
we
exemplo,
have situations like in Altinópolis,
o peso da primeira
where
florada
the weight
é
of the
menor,
first bloom is a little bit
60%.
lower,
Tudo isso pela
66%.
questão da
It's
indução
all due
floral,
to
do
the
clima
flora
e da
induction,
chuva, do
climate,
colheita.
and
Então,
rainfall
na média,
when
é
they
muito
took place.
parecido.
But in average, it's very much
94%
similar,
de
94% first and second bloom.
Tem também a questão
Also,
da
we
determinação
have
nas áreas que tem maior
the areas
região
with a
centro,
more or
norte
less
e
water
nordeste,
deficit,
efeito da irrigação.
the effect of irrigation, north and northwest regions with more highest difference, and then fruit that is bigger, larger in the irrigated areas, and also this other fruit where
Qual é a explicação
that is in a
do ponto de vista
non-irrigated area where
técnico
rainfall
para
came
esse grande
later,
número de frutos nesse
or
ano?
water was available
Primeiro,
later.
A
So
explicação é que
climate zoning.
é natural
This
da
is a
planta.
natural characteristic of plants due to their reserves. When you have a smaller crop, then plants will accumulate more reserves, so they will produce
A
more
possibilidade de florescimento e de pegamento no ano seguinte.
because of the blooming and fruit setting in the following year. And the second point that is very important is that the climate situation was almost perfect. We had a previous time, a time right before blooming, that is the floral induction, May, June, July. It was a dry
Favoreceu a indução floral.
weather that favored floral induction. And then from August on,
Chuvas ocorreram
rainfall
no momento
took
adequado,
place at the right
do
time,
ponto de vista quantitativo
and from the
também.
quantitative point of view as
No
well.
momento do pegamento
And
fisiológico final,
in the final
nesse
fruit
período de
setting,
outubro,
physiologically
nós não tivemos altas
speaking, in
temperaturas,
October, we didn't have the high temperatures that usually is one of the factors that influence the fruit drop. But also, this map shows that there was a large variability in terms of climate in this west
essa região amarela mais central,
Minas and
norte,
this yellow area that is intermediate, and also the green area here with the more mild weather with a better distribution of water, of rain. So weather will strongly influence the situation, and is the main factor to explain the number of fruit per tree.
Aqui pouco retrato
Here, a snapshot showing
que as
the
chuvas
12 regions with rain
houve aquele
falling.
déficit de abril a julho.
Well, there was a deficit from April to June with low rainfall, and as of August, September on, then rain fell at the right time, excepting December and January with a little bit of shortage of rain, and then favored blooming and fruit set.
Determinante,
Another determining factor that, as we compare that to last year, is that this year temperatures are not as high In red, we have the number of days above 35 degrees Celsius. That was very significant. In blue, even more favorable situation. In yellow, intermediate. But there was no physiological drop or abortion of fruit that were significant because of this lower temperature and the rainfall being distributed in a more favorable way. That explains a lot of the good fruit setting resulting. And as of February, rain fell in a very well distributed way and at the amount that was ideal. That's why the fruit developed well. This is a critical time, September, October, November. If we have high temperatures, then high stress results, and then we have for several years an intense drop of this fruitlet. At the time of the physiological drop, the plant will produce ethylene that will cause the drop of the fruit, that will reduce the final number of fruit per tree. And in 2018, that didn't take place significantly because of the extremely favorable conditions we had. And then size, fruit size. What is the fruit size? When we have more fruit in the tree, then we expect to have a lower size of fruit. That is, they're inversely proportional. But besides that, we have also the effect of the climate. So work carried out by our Fundecitrus committee with the support of Vinicius and Professor Barbosa, we came up to this new equation with this new factor included this year. So there is a coefficient to determine for determination with 4 factors included, shown here. So here we have the fruit in the tree at stripping, and then the fruit weight at stripping in April, and then the accumulated or sum of first and second blooms, and you have here how the accumulated rainfall was from May to July. That is a critical time for fruit growth. That explains for the 11 last crops, it explains
então a assertividade é bastante grande. A gente analisou essas 11 safras quando a gente projeta
is the adjusted squared R. So that explains why we have this figures. We have a high likelihood of having a little error. Of course, that weather will interfere. If it's a dry year, then the interference is going to be 1. If it's a wetter year, then it's going to be different. But still, another important factor that we can see, that this is what changed citriculture in Florida, is the fruit drop. We have a mechanical drop and also the drop caused by pests and diseases. And we can see a trend here, especially in the last 2 years, of increased droppage due to two determining factors. Greening, that is increasing in intensity and severity, and out of control, almost, fruit borer that doubled in amount this year. 5.7% of fruit that dropped were caused by fruit borer and fruit fly. In multiple blooms, it happened, and then the control was late, and also we have the greening that is 3 to 4%, but we have an expectation of increased droppage also due to greening this year. So when we analyze greening, that is one of the most important factors here. If we think in the mid and long term, we have to remind ourselves that we have 3 scenarios. Central region with a higher incidence, the extreme south and north, and also the west of the triangle with a very lower incidence, and Rio Preto, Bebedouro with intermediate incidence. So 2018 survey shows 18.15% of symptomatic trees. So 8% more plants were diseased with a higher severity as well. Plants that were in the level 2 will now be in level 2, 3, and then with increased fruit drop. So we expect higher droppage due to greening.
A soma aí dos problemas
So
sanitários
adding
no
up
ano de
all
muita
the plant
fruta,
health problems in a year of a lot of fruit, so the assumption that we use here is that the droppage is going to be higher than that of last year.
Então, dentro da equação, esses
So
quatro
back to the
fatores
equation, we have the four
determinados,
factors
existe um fator
determined.
de correção também
There is a
que é
correction
utilizado
factor
para
that is also
ajustar
used for
esse número
adjusting
final.
this final figure.
Quando se faz essa
When we have this
contempla todos esses fatores, número de
all
árvores
the factors
produtivas,
taken in,
173
that is
milhões,
bearing trees,
173
103.973 million, and then fruit per tree, 782, and then drop rate that we had estimated at 17.5, it was 16 in fact, so this is the highest drop rate in the last 5 years.
E o fruto de
And
260 por caixa, que ele foi feito
260
baseado naquela
fruit per
equação,
box,
nós chegamos
based on
no
that
número de
equation,
388
that came up to 388
Aqui é
million
resumo
boxes
variedades,
of
da situação
estimate.
em cada extrato,
This is the
né?
orange production forecast for each
Tem análise
variety,
de
and here
produtividade,
the
taxa
analysis
de
of
queda, por exemplo,
yield,
nas
drop
precoces,
rate for
elas são
earlies,
menores,
it
na-
is
na pera
it's lower for
intermediária,
pera
está
is
com
intermediate.
mais
Here,
quantidade, e a
fruit that
produtividade
stay longer in the
por
tree,
hectare,
and the
que é
yield
isso.
per hectare, that is a good
Mesmo na
news.
presença do
Even in the
greening,
presence of greening,
enquanto que o nosso principal concorrente está com a
as
produtividade
if our competitors have a yield next to 20 ton
400
for
500 caixas,
per
a Prefeitura
hectare,
de São Paulo ela está com a produtividade
here
estimada
we
sendo
have
de
the
50
estimated
caixas.
yield of
E provavelmente a maior
1,050.
produtividade histórica
that is
na nossa
probably
agricultura,
the
que nós temos
highest in
diminuído
our
o tamanho.
history.
E por que está acontecendo?
And why
isso
is
aqui?
that so?
A sensação inicial, olha, o greening
Initially,
chegou,
we
a
can
situação,
think about the greening
ela
coming
tem
in, so the
complicada, né,
situation
problema sério, mas existe
tries
vários
to
fatores
is probably
que
going to be
dão
more
curto, médio
complicated, but we have to see the short, mid, and long term. Our citriculture,
prazo. De 2 décadas para cá, ela passou
from
por uma
2 decades ago
Há 10
on,
anos
it went
atrás,
through a
40%
revolution. 10 years ago, 40%
plantas tinham
of the
presença
plants
da CVC.
had CVC,
Reduziu sensivelmente
citrus
o tamanho da
variegated
fruta
chlorosis, that
e a produção por
decreased the
planta.
size of the fruit and the production per
Houve
plant.
quase uma
And also there was a
renovação
renewal in
quase
15 years of almost all the citrus planted area, 80% was renewed. And then groves were planted
dentro de novo
within
conceito,
a new concept.
que desde a muda,
Since the nursery plant to soil preparation and irrigation that is present today, more than 30% of the groves and the choosing of the region, all that explains
por que que nós estamos
why
conseguindo mesmo
we have
com
been
esse programa
able
aumentar a
to
produtividade.
still increase
O grande
productivities.
risco que
The
a gente tem,
major
a
risk that we
faca no nosso
have
pescoço é o greening.
is greening,
Se a gente dormir,
because if
ele
we
engole, tá? Ele é mortal. Então a curva mostra
let
que
it,
está
you know,
aumentando.
forget about it, then it's
De 2015
deadly.
para 18,
So from
quase
2015 to
1.800 propriedades
2018,
deixaram de desistir por causa da doença.
many farms
No negócio,
left this business, but those that are staying in the business are professionals. And within this new concept, and margins are tight, yield has increased.
foi 5% há 20 anos.
Irrigation that was 5% before is now 30. So we have to really choose the region before implementing or planting the grove. All the nursery plants come from protected nurseries, and planting density and rootstock choice is are also important for this increase in yield. This is a summary. I think we're going through a very favorable situation, but we do have a yellow light. If we fail to take action, greening may compromise or affect our production. If we go on like this, we can be the most competitive citriculture in the world. Thank you very much. We now have time for questions. Thank you very much, Juliano. Right now, I would like to call back on stage our Vice President, Roberto Hugo Yankee Jr., Juliano Aires as well. Please come back to on stage. Coordinator Marcos Fava Neves, Coordinador Vinícius Gustavo Trombin, and Coordinator of Statistics, Professor José Carlos Barbosa.
Neste momento, então, damos início
So
à sessão
we'll
de
now
perguntas
begin our
e
Q&A
respostas.
session.
Pedimos a todos vocês
We
que
kindly
as
remind
façam ao
you to
microfone
ask your
que
questions
está
through the
entregue.
microphone available
Sempre
from
nos
one of our
vocês,
assistants
claro,
close to
levantem
you.
a mão,
Please
se
raise your
apresentem,
hand, introduce yourself,
as perguntas
and then
aos
forward
que
your
estão
questions
presentes aqui na
to
nossa
those
mesa, tá bom?
present
Podem ficar
on
à
stage.
vontade.
Feel free to ask questions.
Perguntas aqui da nossa plateia, ali acima, à minha esquerda.
There's a question in the back of the auditorium to the left. Please say your name.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning.
Sérgio Baltazar.
I am Sergio Baltazar. I am with Cibicalco in Limeira. The question is, out of the 388 million boxes, how much will be aimed at processing and how much is going to be for domestic market consumption? Would you like to take that question?
Olha, isso é uma...
This is a difficult question to be answered because that will depend on the year. That is, we have the demand for juice production and also the domestic market. We are at a time where the inventory of juice is low, so there is a trend of processing more, and most of the fruit is already purchased, and that varies from every year, but usually we talk about 50-60 million boxes aimed at the market. It might be a little bit more or less, and the rest is processed by industries. So I would say next to 80% of the production should be aimed at juice production. I don't know if Marcos would like to add to this. Thank you for your question. Just to bring figures from the previous crop, 285 million boxes, 236 were processed, so it's like 50 million only for the domestic market. Due to more fruit being produced this year, that probably will interfere in the price to the consumer of fresh fruit as well, then I would risk to say that out of the 388 million boxes, 60 to 65 million will be aimed at the domestic market, be it for fresh fruit or juice that has increased in the market. I can give you more details about that later. And 320 million then would be crushed. This is my view on what's going to happen. Another question in our Q&A session. Please stand up when you ask a question so that we can get you in a video. So stand up, say your name. Good morning, I'm Jaqueline from Luiz Dreyfus. The question is to Professor Barbosa. Considering the assumptions that may be changed during the crop, that is size of fruit and drop, what would be the minimum crop we can have at the end and the maximum one? What's the range? Initially, we have a variation in the number of fruit, right? The margin of error is 2.8%. So if you consider 2.1 of 288 is approximately 17, more or less in terms of number of fruit. So 2 times 3.8, 17. So this is a variation in the number of fruit. So we consider that the 388 plus or minus 17. And also we have the follow-up on the fruit drop. That depends on the year, of course, but let's go back to that slide with the figures. One more. I think one more. Yeah, no, that one.
Aí a gente tem a média, né? A média do
Here we have the average
o desvio padrão deu
number of fruit,
confiança é 17.
783, the standard deviation for 26, and the confidence level 17. That is 2.1% of a margin of error. So this is the margin of error, 2% more or less, or plus or minus the 388 million. Besides that, we have the variation of droppage and weight, fruit weight during the crop that is followed up throughout the crop. That depends on the climate, and also, they will depend on the climate. And the equation that we saw before, rainfall from May, June, and July will directly influence the fruit weight and drop. So if we have a year, just like we estimate to have, the climatology people has forecast a normal year in terms of rainfall. So if it's a regular year with 177 millimeters in the first 3 months, then we expect this size of fruit. And fruit drop is estimated to be large. Imagine that this drop is going to be higher than we even think, because it's a short crop, 94% first and second bloom fruit. So 94%, that's going to be harvested before or earlier. So if you think of Hamlin, it's already starting. Harvest pera is going to be concentrated also. The only problem this year is that we have a lot of fruit to be harvested, and the industry doesn't have the capacity to process it all together. So some's going to be held. Pera, Valencia. Well, Valencia maybe will have some loss because it will be together, harvested together with the pera, and then you won't have the capacity to process everything. And then the fruit's going to be too mature in the tree, and will start dropping more. So I think that's it. Anything else? So 2.1% is the margin of error we work with. 8 million boxes, plus or minus. So 388 plus 8, 396, and 388 minus 8, 380. So that's the range we have, 380 to 396. And the rest will depend, we'll have to follow that up along the year. Professor, I'm Pedro, I work with Jaqueline. I'm sorry, his microphone is on and off, but the correction factor has kept the same. So the calculation is direct, right? Well, this correction factor is based on the history. It has not been kept the same. 1 year was 16%. The other year was 5%. Other years it was 10%. So we are working with the average correction factor. And the first year we have the average for the last 80 years. And this correction factor, in fact, it shouldn't even be there. It is there to correct factors that we cannot even detect in our forecast. Once we are able to forecast everything affecting our production, then we can exclude this correction factor. But so far we cannot do that. So we are using an average of correction factors for the period. Any other questions? Just like to remind you that we also are being watched live in other countries like United States, Costa Rica, Germany, France, Spain, Mexico, Argentina, United Kingdom, and some countries in Africa as well. Also here in Brazil and abroad. If you're watching us, please forward your question via WhatsApp. 55 16 99 629 2471 is the number you should use. 55 16 99 629 2471 is the WhatsApp number you may use for questions to be forwarded. Any other questions here from those in this audience?
Posso fazer comentário, então, enquanto
So may I
esquentam aí nas perguntas?
make a question or comment? I think it's important to consider something here for this crop, and I think the most important outlook here, I'd like to even have a slide here to show the biannuality. This is what we have to think of, because when you were expecting a high number, when you look at the whole period, then it's very balanced in terms of the high and lows here. Can we go to that slide? I'd like to talk about that graph a little bit more. The graph that Roberto Yankee showed right at the beginning. I think that's what we should expect in terms of midterm. Meanwhile, let me talk about the 3 points that I would consider, not only in terms of the market, but what this volume is going to be like. We have the expectation of average rainfall calculated especially from May to August. That is basic for this growth, this crop. So any variation will cause different results because we have more sensitivity due to the high concentration of fruit in the first and second bloom. So the first thing we have to see in terms of that follow-up is the volume of rain. Also, for the triangle, for the West Minas Gerais, we have to consider the fruit drop in terms of caused by greening, and also fruit borer, fruit fly, and others in terms of their influence in the fruit drop. And also we have to think of the operational aspect, because there's no industrial installed capacity to receive such a concentrated volume of fruit. This is also something that we should take into consideration. It's going to be, maybe we should start earlier or finish later, and that may cause some change in the numbers as well. So just would like to mention those 3 points as our concern for the next 30 to 90 days. So this is the message I'd like you to take home of all, because it shows, I was even talking to Roberto about this, he is wearing the shoes of a grower, and I am a fan. I'm wearing the colors of a fan for the productive chain, because I want the most income to be generated for the region. So I think that the Nobel Prize would be that of high yield per hectare, because we haven't seen that in the sugarcane. We haven't seen this for any other crop in Brazil, with this pickup that was amazing as the citriculture has had. We are using much less area to be able to deliver efficiency. So I think that this graph is the one you should frame and put up on the wall, because you made it. So it's a very expensive land where Orange is, and you're getting rid of land, and you're making more yield per hectare. So this is number one of science for Funded Citrus. You deserve an award. All of you that worked endlessly for these results to be obtained, you deserve an award. And this is the mid and long-term situation for our productive chain here reflected. 388 is high, but is just like the same at 387, below the 416. So Citrus BR, that right now is together with our Secretary of Agriculture in Asia, developing important markets for Brazil. They're still, to be conquered in the Asian world. But so Citrus BR has announced that inventories for Brazilian industries is 200,000 tons. It's low if you historically
ele é número baixo.
think of
E, em
inventories.
respeitando
And
a bianualidade da
in
citricultura,
respecting the
é uma produção
biannuality
mais
of the
baixa também.
crop, this is
Então, é
also a
natural,
lower
vai haver
production.
pouquinho de
Of course, you're going to
melhoria
have
no
a little
nível de
bit of
estoques, mas
improvement
ele
in terms of
volta para
inventories,
frente
but then it will
ano
go
que vem.
back
Então,
down
assim,
next
é
year.
número grande,
So,
mas na minha opinião ele é absorvível. Né?
so it's a big number, a large number, but it's absorbable, so to speak.
Internet aqui para nós.
So, a question
Comunicação Jaqueline Ribas aqui. Bom dia
coming
a todos.
from
Voz aqui das perguntas
our
pelo WhatsApp. A
questions
primeira pergunta é feita pela Ana
forward
Flávia,
live.
documentada
Ana
de São
Flavia
Paulo,
is
e
in
ela
the
fala
inner
que
part of
gostaria
Sao
de
Paulo
entender
state, and
pouco
she
mais
says she would like to
sobre o
understand
mercado 100%
our
que foi dito
100%
nas
market that was
pautas
mentioned
anteriores,
in
além de entender a
questions
divisão de
before.
mercado
And also
interno
she'd like to
e
understand the
da safra
division of
anterior e a expectativa para essa
domestic
safra.
and foreign market in terms of this crop. And Jaqueline was the one
As notícias são boas.
asking the question. So the news is good.
Batalhamos
We have
todos
always
para conquistar cada vez mais
struggled to get even more domestic market.
processar fruta
Brazil is
caseira.
used to processing fruit
O produto 100%
domestically. And now the 100% product, the brands, they are coming up now and consolidating themselves. There is a standardization of flavor that is more interesting to the consumers. This market has grown a lot. For a figure to be brought to you here, I talked to some people in the industry, and from last year, or from 2017 to 2018, more than 40 million liters was the growth in terms of consumption of products you already are familiar with. And something else is that we have 4 brands. We have more than 40, with more than 45% of the market. So it's not a market of regional brands anymore, but rather it's becoming nationalized. For example, Netcholana, Paratis, and other brands. And that's important to the market as well, because we have more spray-in of channels. So that's the first part of the question. So it's good news,
do mercado interno brasileiro.
the increase or the growth of the domestic market for juice that is 100% in the packaging that is going up, and that represents something to be increasingly worked with. And you see that this 40 million liters took place in a year of crisis. If we have the economy picking up, that's going to accelerate even more. Thank you, Marcos. So the second part of the question.
De mercado interno e externo.
So what about the split for the domestic and foreign market in terms of this crop, of previous crop and this one? Previous crop, foreign market and domestic, 285 million boxes, 236 million processed, 214 by the 3 associate company to Citrus BR, and the rest for the other companies. And those companies, 214 associated to Citrus BR, you can say 96, 97% exports. Then out of the 285, probably 200 million were exported. If we keep
Uma proporção equivalente,
at this rate,
você tem que
then
dessas
out of the 388 million boxes, probably
umas 290
290 million will be exported. Thank you.
Agora uma pergunta
Now a question from Suzane Nunes.
do Panamá.
She is in Panama,
Ela é voltada ao
and
controle do
her
greening.
question is
Fala,
towards greening control.
de árvores para combater
Besides
quais
renewal and
outras
growth to
iniciativas
control greening, what other initiatives are you taking to control greening? And is there renewal of trees still? Of growth?
É uma pergunta ampla, né?
It's a wide
Na verdade,
question.
nós não
In
temos uma
fact,
bala de prata.
we do not have the silver bullet to control greening yet. Maybe we are not going to have in the short term or even mid. There is a learning curve for greening, just like it was the case of CVC in the past.
A pesquisa vai gerando
Research will generate
conhecimento, o
knowledge,
produtor
and the citrus growers
incorporando
incorporate that
as ações no
knowledge to
campo.
their actions in the
A
field.
gente observa
But what we can see
que para
is that
ser referência no mundo hoje no
to be a
controle
reference in
greening,
controlling greening
São Paulo é,
worldwide, as São Paulo is,
o Fundecitrus foi considerado no
Fundecitrus was considered in the last meeting on greening in California as the worldwide reference for controlling greening.
todos os presentes.
it was said there in front of everyone. So it's a hard work that is carried out in the field, from the use of a healthy nursery plant, the endless control of the psyllid, the vector insect, not only for the farm itself, but for the whole region. We are carrying out important work in reducing the inoculum in commercial and abandoned areas. So this work has a collective view, bringing new tools that will enable better control of the vector insect. For that, we advocate that differently from CBC, where we had 3 pillars for control. There was nursery plant, vector control, and also elimination of diseased plants by pruning. Now we have 10 commandments for greening. So it's much more difficult to be controlled than any other disease we have faced in the past, because the vector is much more efficient and the population is higher in number, and it migrates from one place to the other. It doesn't respect a fence. So today we have 82% of healthy plants, whereas in Florida 90% of plants are contaminated, and the disease came up here and there practically at the same time with the same technology. So what's important towards this disease is the attitude and action that is taken collectively. Thank you very much. Now a question from Tiago Antunes that is watching us live in Costa Rica. Question is forwarded to Marcos Fava. What is the expectation of the international prices of, say, OJ and NFC in processing those million boxes stated? Thank you. Nice to know that there's a large number of countries watching us live and asking questions. So it may come up or down, but I don't want a kid. But anyhow, it's the same reasoning. If you look at this picture here, it will depend on the capacity of maintaining inventories, keeping inventories, but I do not see reason for reduction of prices to take place for the product due to 200,000 tons for a consumption of 1.7 million tons that we have, 1.8 in fact, in 2017, only 200,000 of stocks or inventory. It's low. Of course, that once processed is going to be a large volume. But if you start from the hypothesis that the biannuality is going to be present, and then next year we're going to have a lower crop, much lower than this, maybe we should take inventory to a comfortable level, but then we're going to have a consumption of that. So it might be an immediate fluctuation, but I don't see a downward trend for price of FCOJ or NFC due to the figures we are presenting. Florida runs risks of now having the season of climatic adversities. Of course, no one is hoping for that, but it's another variable to be considered. So I think that is a absorbable number, so to speak, to keep figures or prices at their rate. So last question, also related to prices, comes from Venancio Fraga, that is here in the inner part of Sao Paulo state. He asks something very similar, that is, what is the impact on the price of the juice? And also he wants to know about any, if there is any expectations for the increased price of juice for exports. Well, about prices for exports, investments have been made in Asia, and it's made in long term, it's not immediate. And that would be the favorable surprise that we could expect. But I do not believe in increased exports unless it's higher transference of inventories of companies from the Brazilian or domestic facilities to facilities abroad. But that is not saying that that's going to be an increased consumption of juice overseas. So what we see in terms of consumption of orange juice is a slight downward trend in the last few years. We work with the figures, and together with Vinicius and for Citrus BR also is made available the information for the whole productive chain. In 2003, consumption was 2.4 million tons of juice converted to FCOJ. 2.4.
2017 veio para
In 2017, 182. 22% decrease, especially due to the United States that went down 43% in 14 years, and Germany 42% decrease.
Não tem nada a ver
So
com
that
renda.
has nothing to do with income, because those countries have increased income, but it has to do with how aggressive was the release of new orange juice products. It's a fact. There's nothing we can do about it unless we can make our communication of orange juice being healthy, that we should think of that instead of consuming a cereal bar. So it's a marketing effort, so we can have a more noble view of the product to, decrease its competition of teas and other beverages. So juice is a liquid food. It should be dealt with accordingly, and that's important also for pricing of the product to the consumer, to the end consumer. Thank you very much. The development of the crop forecast survey supplies a world of opportunities to the citrus industry that will provide guidance in decision making and definition of strategies for the future. This work is only made possible thanks to the support of citrus growers that allow our survey agents to enter their farms. So we sincerely appreciate your partnership that is vital for this work to be carried out. We acknowledge also the support of the Citrus Board of Governors to the crop forecast survey, and we thank for sure the orange juice company, Citrosuco, Cutrale, and Louis Dreyfus for once again having allowed their growth to be part of our samples, and for the continuous supply of data on the average size of the fruit received for processing throughout the crop. We also thank the efforts of the members of the technical committee for improving techniques and pursuing new technologies. We express our appreciation to the São Paulo State Department of Agriculture and Supply for providing information on the number of citrus nursery plants marketed under the permit to transit plants in the state of São Paulo along 2018. We thank the efforts of all survey agents towards keeping the high-quality survey standards with ethics and efficiency. Lastly, we'd like to remind you that the crop forecast survey summary will be published still today on Fundecitrus website, and the complete report will be made available shortly on our website. Well, I've just been told that it's already available. And before my final words, Roberto Yankee is going to say a few closing remarks. I just would like to first say that this year we have two records. First is that we broke the basis of we have a decreased citrus planted area. So this is something that we broke. And then first time yield is more than 1,050 boxes. We have a lot of fruit on the trees, and we have heavy fruit, large fruit, in comparison to previous years. So the question that was asked before in terms of what the end of the crop is going to be like, well, from now on, the same rain that will increase the size of the fruit is the same rain that in a very, with a tree with a lot of fruit will have not as good bloom next year. So the biannuality will also be more, have more fluctuation because of that. Today we have then a record production, and but I'd like to say most importantly is to thank all of you, Juliano, Marcos, Vinicius, Barbosa, for your serious and dedicated work, very assertive work, and that's what Fundecitrus provides us with in Brazilian citriculture. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Fundo de Defesa da Citricultura, Fundecitrus, we thank you all for your presence and for watching us live also in several countries. Thank you very much for being with us. Have a great day and an excellent weekend as well. And let's drink Brazilian orange juice.